What is Tantra? I'm going to do my own version of this. You can also chat GPT this. It seems like so many humans are curious about what Tantra is and what Tantra isn't. And so I just want to preface this by stating that my definition of Tantra is true for me. And I really invite you to deepen in your devotion to the tantric traditions and practices to really formalize and develop your own definition and not take ChatGPT or what some book says as your definition. However, to honor the ancient traditions and the practices related to the field of study that I've specialized in, which is non-dual Saivism, as well as a fusion of Neo-Tantra and tantric interpretations through the various mystery schools that I'm a member of, I like to refer to what I teach and practice as contemporary Tantra. So first, the origin of the word Tantra, it's again 2 Sanskrit syllables that translates to mean to weave. Tantra, to weave, right? So when we're feeling into the meaning of Tantra, we're almost starting to feel into a tapestry. What does it mean to weave a tapestry? And how can we feel into the interconnectivity of the all through this waning and wafting, akin to textiles, akin to fabrics? So this is the actual true meaning of the word. It is not connected to sexuality at all, other than in very minute chapters of the tantric text related to the dynamics between the inner energies of Shiva and Shakti, right? And we're going to go more into this later. But in terms of the weaving and the waving and the interconnectivity of the all, the way this that can show up in humanity is through our relationships and through the connections that we have with other humans. And the deepest connection that most of us know is through our romantic partners, right? Is through the people that we're choosing to be in that ultimate form of union, which manifests itself via the body physically through some form of penetrative union. Classically, right? Again, this isn't gendered at all. This isn't an assumption that men are men and women are women and a man and a woman have to be together for a tantric union. No, this can really apply to any and all humans and any genders. So what is contemporary Tantra, what I practice and teach? I like to say that we're living in really complex contemporary times, right? We are living in a world in which technology is a huge part of how we connect with others and how we cultivate intimacy on an emotional, an intellectual, and an energetic level. So if we're talking about Tantra and how it existed centuries ago, millennia ago in India, right? We can't really be doing exactly what they did way back then and be true to the esoteric traditions. We actually have to feel into our current reality and where we're at as a culture and as humanity on this planet. And so how can we apply these esoteric traditions and teachings in contemporary times, knowing that we're dealing with technology, we're dealing with the crumbling of institutional norms and values, and we're also dealing with what I like to call a loneliness epidemic. I also will often refer to this as the intimacy epidemic because of COVID and because of, again, these technological advances that potentially could be bringing us closer together emotionally, intellectually, and energetically. However, they are separating us physically and ultimately separating us on the realms of the energetics and potentially the emotions and potentially what I call universal intimacy, which is our connection to spirituality. We're living in a world right now that is highly polarized, that is highly rooted in othering culture, us versus them, red versus blue, man versus woman, whatever you want to name and whatever you believe in, there's a opposite opinion that's being forced via the agenda of media and the news. And so we're becoming more divided than ever. And I truly believe that the reason why Tantra is now being applied in this contemporary way is because humanity needs connectivity more than ever before. We need to feel into all the ways in which we are one, all the ways in which I, no matter what my lived experience is, what my gender is, what my sexual preferences are, what my religion was, all of that doesn't matter. That I am the same as you because we are human. We are one. The other term that I like to connect with my definition of contemporary Tantra is being trauma-informed. Again, different times than when Tantra was brought to the culture. I do want to speak a little bit before I go into the contemporary way of being trauma-informed. I do want to share a little bit on Tantra and the reason why it was revolutionary because it was accessible to all. It was not rooted in what is known as the caste system. For those that understand Indian culture and have studied ancient India, you know the importance of the caste. If you were born Brahmin, you were Brahmin. If you were not, you were not, meaning they really believed that based on the family that you were born into, that was indicative of your ability to access the divine. So only people that were born Brahmin could access divinity. If you were born in any other caste, you really couldn't have a relationship with the highest realms of the divine. It was that black and white, right? You couldn't access the religion. It was that elitist, really. And so Tantra was actually brought into the culture via women. I like to believe this, and my guide, Layla Martin, taught me this transmission that, it was the first casteless way of worshiping not just the gods, but the goddesses, right? It's really rooted in understanding goddess, understanding all the archetypes of the divine feminine. And so it was the very first religion, I'm putting religion in quotes for a reason, because it was a different form of what, again, we think of in terms of institutionalized religions or church. It wasn't really that. It was a way of organizing and worshiping the divine via the body, understanding that our worship of the divine was not dependent upon attending church, paying a church, and or gathering together in community. Although gathering together in community is the best way to worship your God, goddess, or the divine. But you can also worship God, goddess, the divine on your own, right? And so some of the tantric practices are really about your own relationship with the divine and understanding that you can access the divinity in each and every moment when you slow down, when you pause, when you go inward, when you utilize these tools of breath and sound and movement and touch, right? Remember, I mentioned that in terms of the field of somatics as well. Notice the overlap. But just by meditating and breathing, you can access these transcendental or peak states in which you feel one with the divine, you feel bliss, you feel ecstasy. Anyone who has meditated and reached these states, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So again, Tantra was sort of the first organized religion. Again, I'm putting that in air quotes. It's just a way of understanding what was happening in the culture, which it's very hard for us to do. This is 2026, y'all. Religion now is very different than it was back then. But it was a way of accessing the divinity that was very embodied and very empowered. So by embodied, I mean we can access this through the body, right? Other religions tend to vilify or shame the body. I was raised Catholic, right? I was taught that my body was sinful, and to claim a desire and act upon that desire could result in me going to hell, right? So Catholicism isn't a very embodied religion. Tantra is. Tantra says there's no good, bad, right, wrong in terms of your relationship with your body. In each and every moment, you can feel into your divinity too. So there's no separation between humanity and divinity. We just feel via the humanness of the body that we can access the divine via this vertical channel, also known as the Sushumna channel. And in, again, doing these practices, we can feel into this feeling of universal consciousness, universal love, bliss, ecstasy. Contemporary Tantra is, again, this embodied, empowered expression of it. What it means to be trauma-informed is that I have done trauma-informed trainings to understand that so much can come up in this work, in the relationship that, again, individuals have to their body, to their sensuality, and to their sexuality. So I do think that any tantric practitioner practicing, leading, facilitating, and teaching in this year now, 2026, must be trauma-informed. It behooves all of us to understand the relationship with trauma and Tantra. And this is what it means to practice, study, and facilitate contemporary Tantra.